May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. As much as I would like to leap in on the gospel today and go over the various parts of the second half of Jesus' inaugural sermon in his hometown congregation, I'm not going to do that. For those of you who've been around, you realize that I've probably done that a number of times over the years, but I have to tell you that over this last week I've been so moved by reading and reflecting on and studying Paul's 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians. You might have noticed that when John Alex read it, he added a line. He didn't invent that. That's the last line of the previous chapter. And it's really critical, isn't it? One of the things that you know, so you don't think I'm just working without a net, liturgically. In the church, you have to have good reason for shortening a lesson, but you can always make them longer. Just a note to any of you. I can always make the lessons longer. But in fact, I wanted to bring that up because last week we had the 12th chapter, a good part of the 12th chapter which was read, and it details all sorts of gifts that the Holy Spirit bestows across the church. Well, first of all, the church that we're talking about is a congregation that Paul had founded in Corinth. He had lived with them for about 18 months, and then he took off. And when he left, they had a functioning congregation. They had an awareness of God's presence with them. They had heard the gospel that Paul preached to them, and they were now responsible for being a community of faith. And you wouldn't be surprised that once Paul left, they started to have divisions. Now, it would not surprise me because the divisions were probably already there. And they were waiting for Paul to leave. And then they began to pop out. And so some of them wouldn't surprise me if they were the ones who spoke in tongues. They were saying, well, you know, the Holy Spirit has blessed us with the ability to speak in languages that we don't know. I'm thinking, I don't know that's such a gift, but you don't have that. And so obviously, those of us who speak in tongues